The ACC is in trouble again as another school looks to be exiting. Could the end of the Atlantic Coast Conference be coming? Hold on to your horses, folks.
You are Locked On Boston College, your daily podcast on the Boston College Eagles, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, folks. Welcome to Locked On Boston College. I'm your host, AJ Black. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. New customers join today, and you'll get $200 in bonus bets if your first bet of $5 or more wins. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. The health of the ACC has been a major talking point of the last 6 months. As just 2 months ago, Florida State Seminoles started that whole kerfluffle about getting out of the Atlantic Coast Conference. And you can understand where they're coming from in terms of a financial perspective, as the SEC and Big Ten are set to make huge amounts of money in the upcoming media deals that are going to place those two conferences miles ahead of where the ACC schools are. So in order to better compete, as they say, in these upcoming these schools are looking and trying to find ways out of this grant of rights. So we saw Florida State do this. They're going to court, and good luck if they can figure it out. They just seem like the grouchy uncle in this situation. But you were waiting in a sense to see which the next school would be that would try to explore this option as well, because you knew it was coming. You knew this wasn't just going to be a Florida State thing. It's gonna cascade. You're gonna have more schools do it. So I always thought the second school would be Clemson. That seemed like a logical choice of another school that would want to get out. But no, Inside Carolina had a conversation today with the Board of Trustees chair, John Pryor, and he is in the process of trying to make it easier for the school to get out. And what they did was they're going to try to get a recommendation that requires system chancellors to provide advance notice prior to executing any agreement to change conference. They're trying to remove that. So basically, if they want to get out of this, they want to make it easier. They don't want to make it harder on the school to get out of the Atlantic Coast Conference. So UNC, when you read more from it's a great article by Greg Barnes. They're talking about the financial things again, right? And Pryor says, I think we all have an obligation to assess the financial realities and make the best decision based on those realities. That was the Board of Governors outlined on Wednesday. And if the current financial model of the Atlantic Coast Conference doesn't improve, then it would cause real concern about how Carolina would continue to improve and maintain its excellence in athletics. And they talk about all the national championships, from playing really well at basketball to women's lacrosse. They have a lot of great programs at UNC. So they're looking at the numbers, and the numbers are staggering. They have a new study out that has, by 2029, that the Big Ten Conference will get $105 million per school, and the SEC will get $118 million. I mean, I think the payouts for the ACC this year were $40 million. That's how astronomical these payouts are going to be. And they project this Navigate, which is a sports research firm, that the ACC is going to only have $62 million per year. That's a $35 to $45 million gap between those two two conferences and the ACC. That's not good news. That is a huge a canyon between one program, one set of schools, and those other two sets of schools. It clearly delineates two conferences that are going to be the major conferences and everyone else. Now, I don't think there's a few things I think that are really important to note. I think if you've been paying attention to the way the media has been changing, there's going to be I think the media rights deals that we're talking about now, there's a good chance that some of these could change. Now, the Big Ten and AC and SEC, I'm not sure how long they're going to last for, but you're getting the numbers that they're getting are so big, and you're seeing these media conglomerates. You look at what Disney's doing. You're looking at what Warner Brothers Discovery is doing. A lot of these big companies are cutting, and that's trickling down. You're going to see it at NBC. You're going to see it at ESPN. ESPN's part of the mouse, right? They're going to start cutting, and the money is going to start to dry up. It's not going to dry up, but it's not going to right now. I mean, you look at the numbers I just said to you, right? Going from like 45 million to 110 million dollars is insane in 5 years. It's a bubble. It's gonna burst at some point. College sports and the NFL and all that, there's gonna be a limit to it at some point. So I imagine that these numbers may change at some point. That's one part. The other part is, again, with money, these two conferences, I think a lot of these schools like UNC and Florida State and all these other programs are looking and going, oh, we can just jump in and get all that money. And this, I would imagine a school like Florida State could, and maybe Clemson, but I don't think that you're going to see the Big Ten or SEC being able to swallow up all these teams. Are they going to be, with football being king, a team like UVA that I heard is, our program like UVA that I've heard has been big into this thought as well about leaving the ACC. Do they really want to spend, like, divvy out that money to UVA? I just don't see it. I mean, yeah, UVA has a great, basketball program, but and they've got other good programs too, but football's king. That's what it is. It's football. So I think that's another thing to think about too, is that's going to happen. And if the end result of all of this is super conferences, and Clemson and Florida State end up in a super conference with all the other schools that spend absurd amount of money, which again is their right, there's going to be another backlash. I feel that's going to come along too. That is going to be these other schools that are like pounding their chest that don't belong in those conferences are going to lose their spots to schools that do. So I look at a school like Rutgers. I look at a school like Maryland or Vanderbilt. When you look at what they do on the football field, they don't bring in the audiences that Michigan, Ohio State, Florida, Georgia, all the big programs do. So maybe, in the end, if these other schools leave, you may end up with some weird schools that are going to be available. Maybe a Purdue, maybe Illinois or Indiana. It's going to be weird. I don't think this is linear where you're going to have these two super conferences and everyone else is gone. It may happen, but you're going to have there's going to be other things that happen. The Big 12, what happens with them? Their media deal's only for a couple of years. They could end up in a much less strategic place at the end of theirs because of the way the media cycles are going. So it's interesting. It's interesting that UNC is now the next group to pound on that door, to say that they want out. Will they do it? We'll have to wait and see. But I think this next coming 6 months, we're going to hear a lot more of these things. I think it's going to come up more and more. And it's going to be interesting. We'll have to wait and hear what's going on and get into all of that here on Locked On BC. It's going to be fun, I guess. Now, in a moment, I want to get into the NFC championship game. And I had a thought about it, and it came up watching it, and I want to kind of talk about what I saw and why it relates to Boston College. You're not going to believe it, but I'm going to bring it up. We'll get into all of that in just a moment. Happy Super Bowl that all who celebrate from FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. And if you don't celebrate the Super Bowl, what's wrong with you? If you're like me, Super Bowl Sunday is all about scoring the best seat on the couch, grabbing your favorite football snacks, and placing some super bets. I am a huge fan of. I work a morning job, so Super Bowl is tough for me, but especially with small kids. But I love curling up on the sofa and just watching and enjoying it, having some buffalo wings or some nachos. It's just a fun night. Now, FanDuel has made it so many ways for you to end the Super Bowl with a W or two or three, because now you can not only bet who will win the Super Bowl 58, but FanDuel also has bets on which player will score a touchdown, how many points will be scored, and so much more. You've heard those stories about all those random bets that you can find. Most of them are up on FanDuel. You could probably, I'm sure you can find who wins the coin toss, the over-under on the national anthem. I mean, you name it, you could probably find all of that on FanDuel. Now, new customers join today, and you'll get $200 in bonus bets if your first bet of $5 or more wins. So just visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to sign up. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sports partner of the NFL. This is Locked On Boston College. I am your host, AJ Black. And we were just talking about the ACC and its seemingly pending demise. But I want to switch gears here. I was going to talk. I keep waiting to talk about recruiting with you guys. I work at Eagle Insider. There's a lot to talk about with recruiting, but it's the weirdest thing with Boston College. They are out there on the road visiting recruits, which is great. You see, I've retweeted. You can follow me on Twitter at AJBlack247. They're out there, you could see pictures of the coaches with players. They're getting new offers. Also, all that good stuff is happening. But there's a piece of recruiting that's not happening, which are official visits or visits at all. And I find it so weird. On one hand, you think, oh, it's Boston in January. If I look out my door, it's wet and disgusting. Do you want kids from warmer climates to come up here and deal with that? But then I look at Syracuse, Pitt, Penn State, Notre Dame, Rutgers, Maryland. They're all having visitors. They all have equally terrible weather. So it's no excuse that BC's not doing it. But maybe they feel like they get more bang for their buck. I don't know. I still feel like this is a good staff in terms of getting kids. When the kids are there, they really buy in. So any FaceTime I feel is valuable, and the fact that they're not doing it. But that's just a side note here, because what I want to talk about now is the NFC Championship. I'm not talking about the ACC Championship. If you want to hear my thoughts on Zay Flowers, go back to yesterday's episode. But the NFC Championship also had Boston College implications in my brain. Will Harris wasn't playing. I don't know what's going on with him. I know he's on the Lions. I just haven't seen him play. But one of the big moments in this game came in the second half during the midst of a 49ers run where they came back from the dead to come back and win. Dan Campbell, the head coach of the Detroit Lions, he has been living and dying by going for it on fourth down. He's been aggressive, and it bit him twice as they had points. Well, it depends. If you think of their kicker, they could have gone for the points, and in the end, it looks like that would have probably tied the game. But he stuck with his guns, and he went aggressively. And when I'm watching this, I'm thinking to myself, this is awfully like what Jeff Hafley does. This last season, we saw Boston College become one of the top teams in the country in terms of going for it on fourth down. And it made a lot of sense. When you have a running attack like Boston College did, and you could keep it to 3rd and 3, 4th and 3, it made sense to keep going for it. And Boston College was very adept at hitting those fourth downs. So to see the Lions, a team that I feel bucks the trend a little bit of what you expect from an NFL team, to see that they are kind of doing the same thing. And believe me, their offense is very different than Boston College. They do a lot, they do, like, if you want to say, oh, they run the ball a lot, their run scheme is much more complex than what BC does, I think. But that mind frame, the thing that made Dan Campbell a darling up until that fourth quarter of last week, I feel Jeff Hafley has a piece of that in him. And we saw the Lions, and you look at what we're on the Lions, right? Jared Goff like, he's Jared Goff. He's a pretty mid quarterback. And you had a bunch of younger guys and new names like Jahmyr Gibbs and Jamison Williams. There are a lot of younger guys. They were able to go within one drive of making the Super Bowl in just the second year under Dan Campbell. Now, I'm not expecting Jeff Hafley to get to the ACC championship or right there with where BC's at next year. But I like that there's similarities in their game planning. How many years of watching Steve Adazio did we watch him punt from the 40-yard line, the opponent's 40-yard line on like 4th and 3? And you're turtling, whatever word you use being coward. Now you got a coach that's aggressive. You have an offense that can move the ball. And I feel like this aggressive mentality that Jeff Hafley has instilled is giving Boston College another shot at winning. Because if he goes out there and you have Thomas Castellanos and Kai Robichaux and you are at 4th and 2 and you decide to punt, what kind of message is that sending you? Yeah, it's the old school. Yeah, that's what you do in situations like that. But why do you have to follow that? Just because something was the way things were doesn't mean it's something you have to do. And if you're going to be a new coach and you want to blaze a trail, you have to try things differently. Dan Campbell did. Jeff Hafley's doing it. Campbell's had a little bit more success, but I like this combination that the two, I like the similarities the two of them have in that sense. They're physical. They like to do that kind of stuff. And it worked for Campbell. I think it could work for Jeff Hafley. Now, in our final segment, you guys have been asking more hockey talk, and we've talked about hockey in the last 2 episodes. I'm going to talk a little bit more hockey. As BC is the top team in the country, time to puff your chest, Eagles fans. All right. I'm having a little technical difficulty here. Sorry, guys. Give me 2 seconds. I know we come to sports to escape from some of the crazy realities of real life, but can we just talk a minute about preparing for real life? According to the FDA, pharmacies are running out of antibiotics like amoxicillin right in the middle of the worst flu season in over a decade. This is scary. I can't imagine a more helpless feeling than having my wife or one of my kids get sick with a supply chain issue keeping them from life-saving medications they need. Thankfully, we'll be okay because of Jace Medical. The Jace case is a pack of 5 different antibiotics to treat a long list of bacterial illnesses, including UTIs, respiratory infections, sinusitis, skin infections, among others. This stuff could happen to any of us. Visit jacemedical.com and complete your physician encounter. It will be reviewed by a board-certified physician, and your medications will be dispensed by a licensed pharmacy at a fraction of the regular cost. It's never been more important to be prepared than today. Go to jacemedical.com and use offer code LOCKEDON to get $20 off your order. Locked On Boston College, AJ Black here, and we are talking about hockey. You got to talk about hockey right now. This is the biggest story going on in Boston College athletics in the last couple of years is the resurgence of Greg Brown and this hockey team. I was talking to my dad about this the other day, and he's like, yeah, I heard BC's doing great. It's great because they haven't been good for the last couple of years, and he's been right. Like, you watched last year, they were barely a 500 team. They lost to Merrimack in the Hockey East tournament. A couple of years ago, they lost to Vermont. This team seems like a completely different team. And on Monday, the polls showed it. USCHO, or USCO, I think they pronounce it, one of the premier polls in college hockey, released their new poll. And BU is no longer the number 1 team in the country. That goes to Boston College. After winning 2 against the number 1 Terriers, 1 at home and 1 on the road, Boston College takes that number 1 spot. And again, BC is back on top. I think a lot of folks were worried when Jerry York retired that the success that you saw under BC's GOAT, the legendary head coach, one of the best of all time, was going to end. You saw Greg Brown struggle in his first year, but then you saw that recruiting kick up, and now they are number one again. Yeah, it's the middle of January. Yes, you want this later in the season, but baby steps, right? The fact that Boston College is where they are right now is exciting. The fact that they only have 4 losses on the entire season, that they have played exceptionally well, offensively, their goaltender's good. It's all exciting. And this week as well, 2 BC Eagles received Hockey East Weekly Awards with Jacob Fowler, who I said on on yesterday's episode was the star of Saturday's game. The game against BU at Arganis Arena, he was the star. He wins the Stop It goaltender of the week. And then Ryan Leonard was named the Pro Ambitions Rookie of the Week. I was wondering if he would win, Forward of the Week. This is the this marks the third and second honors of the season for each. So 3 for Fowler, 2 for Leonard. Fowler had 58 saves and a .935 save percentage against BU. What a game for this kid. And Ryan Leonard had 3 total points, including the big goal that kicked off this entire weekend. I mean, I had a tough day at work, and I bookmarked that goal, and I watched it again, and it gives me the heebie-jeebies because that was such a fun moment for BC hockey. Now, I want to see this team continue to roll, and this weekend they play. They have a game against UMass Lowell on Friday at Songus Arena, which is again always tough. But Hockey East is tough all the time. It's like the SEC of hockey, right? Every team you play is going to be tough. Then the Bean Pot starts on Monday, and who do you play again? The Boston University Terriers. So there's 2 more big games. But I feel like I'm speaking for all BC fans here when I say every game has become must-watch now. You want to see what these kids can do. You want to see the next big goal. You want to see the next big save because every moment is special. And when you have a team this special, they deserve your support. They deserve for you to watch. The Conte Forum is getting sold out all the time now. They're 4th in the country. I bet that number goes up the way that they're playing. They're the number 1 team in the nation now, folks. They're elite again. It is so fun to talk about BC hockey. We'll be back again tomorrow with more discussions about things going on in BC athletics. This is AJ Black. Follow me on Twitter at AJBlack247. And I'm on Eagle Insider. If you're not already subscribed, please do that. And before you leave, hit the like on this podcast. If you're on YouTube, give us 5 stars on Apple or wherever you get your podcasts. Thank you so much. If you're an everyday listener who have made this part of your daily routine, I really appreciate each and every one of you. We're the only daily Boston College podcast out there, and I appreciate every one of you that have made Locked On Boston College your team every day.